shocking new video shared by President Donald Trump showing Nigerian pastor Reverend Ezekiel Dachimo standing in a mass grave pleading for help against Christian massacres in Plateau State. The post comes hours after Trump announced U.S. Nigerian forces killed ISIS's second-in-command, Abu Bilal al-Minuki. 5 people are dead, 12 injured after a 3-story building collapsed in Abuja. Rescue operations are ongoing and questions are already being asked about building regulations and enforcement. In Bangkok, at least 8 people killed, 25 injured after a train collision triggered a massive fire that engulfed a public bus. The footage is devastating. And Manchester City are the undisputed kings of Wembley. Spectacular 1-0 victory over Chelsea secured their 8th FA Cup trophy over the weekend. History was made.
Bernardo Silva together will lift the 2026 FA Cup aloft.
At the 79th Cannes Film Festival, Nigeria's own Genevieve Nnaji made her historic debut as a global honoree. But the moment that has everyone talking, John Travolta breaking down in tears after receiving a surprise Palme d'Or. The legendary star had no idea it was coming. Congratulations to John Travolta. Now, to our special feature this morning. It's a story that shook Nigeria's medical community and exposed dangerous cracks in how Nigeria's institutions operate. 5 days, 1 hospital. A catastrophic breakdown that left patients dead.
This is a hospital.
This morning, we bring you a special report on 5 days that brought a hospital to its knees, a state to a standstill, and patients to their graves. What happened at the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital wasn't just a clash between federal agencies. It was a catastrophic breakdown where fighting corruption collided with saving lives, and ordinary Nigerians paid the ultimate price.
Imagine.
The morning of Tuesday, May 12th, EFCC operatives walked into the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital to verify a medical report. By afternoon, Teargas had been deployed. Inside a hospital, within days, doctors across Akwa Ibom State had staged a walkout. And by the time the crisis ended, patients who needed surgery, dialysis, emergency care were already dead. This report will examine how it happened, how a routine document verification escalated into Teargas, a statewide medical strike, and a 5-day crisis that exposed dangerous cracks in how Nigeria's institutions communicate. The central question: how did verifying a document cost lives?
Zoom.
To understand what happened at the teaching hospital, you need to hear both sides of the story. Because what the hospital says happened and what the EFCC says happened are 2 completely different narratives, and somewhere between those 2 versions, a crisis was born.
The EFCC personnel came into my office and they introduced himself. He went out of my office barely 2 minutes after. He came in again, but this time around with another personnel. holding gun. And he told me that I was under arrest. I asked him why. I was not the one that issued the medical report. My name is not on the medical report. The report was not issued from my unit. And I'm not a criminal, I'm not a suspect. And the organization did not address the letter to me. So why am I under arrest? He said, when you get to office, you will say all that. They started pushing me, they dragged me out of the office. And when they dragged me out of the office to the walkway, I started crying. I could not tell the hospital, my colleagues in the hospital that came, that these are EFCC personnel, because they had said I should not talk. They were holding gun. I saw many masked and armed men came violently, broke the protector, threatened the people that were around, and people ran away, and they beat some staff that were still by me, and they dragged me and the other staff, 5 of us, into their van.
Professor Ekwe says what happened next felt like an invasion. He contacted the medical director, Professor M.M. Bassi, who became alarmed by what he was hearing and immediately called the police, reporting that unidentified armed men had entered the hospital. But the EFCC tells a completely different story, according to their official statement. This was a routine visit, not a raid. Their operatives introduced themselves, needed a medical report for court the next day, and had sent 2 letters without a response. When Professor Ekwe said the document wasn't ready, they asked him to come to their office. That was when the chief medical director, Professor M.M. Bassi, was contacted. Well, according to the EFCC, Professor Bassi ordered staff to lock the gates, trapping their operatives inside, then called police claiming unidentified gunmen had invaded. The EFCC says the Commissioner of Police in Uyo confirmed EFCC's presence and advised the CMD to open the gates. He refused. And according to the EFCC, what turned a routine visit into chaos was being locked in and attacked by hostile hospital staff, forcing them to call reinforcements. But here is what's not in dispute. Teargas was deployed inside a hospital where vulnerable patients, asthmatics, ICU patients, people on ventilators were struggling to survive. Under the Geneva Convention, civilian hospitals are strictly protected. Even during armed conflict,
even during war,
they cannot be attacked, destroyed, or have their operations disrupted. This immunity is only lost if a hospital is actively used to commit harmful acts, and only after clear warning. This wasn't a war zone. This was a teaching hospital in Uyo, and Teargas was used inside.
Imagine.
While the EFCC and hospital debated who was right, patients were caught in the crossfire. Within hours, the Nigerian Medical Association called an indefinite strike across Akwa Ibom State. Doctors walked out.
When other people came in, they tried to video how they were moving.
This is crazy.
They cocked their guns and
absolutely crazy.
Promised to shoot them if they don't. They collected their phones, and in the process, and hit some of them with gun. Quite a number of people were assaulted, including female doctors. We had to immediately call our members, our Congress, and resume our strike because we have a standing order. Once there's assault on our member, we have to go on strike.
The Nigerian Medical Association didn't just strike, they filed a billion naira lawsuit, calling it a show of shame. For 5 days, the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital was shut down.
This is a hospital.
When the EFCC personnel came in
And when they came in, they didn't come as government officials. They covered their face like a kind of Boko Haram. And
that is their level. That's
so
what
they
they do.
enter here with force, and they pick one of the doctor at the theater.
Just imagine.
So when they pick the doctor at the theater,
When Mazin Nane kind of called them zoological republic, people would think he's saying too much.
Approach was very bad. So the man was actually very out of operating somebody.
Even in war, you don't use such force in hospital.
So it was there that they pick other doctors that was on duty as well.
While the EFCC and the hospital argued about who locked whom in, patients who needed surgery died. Patients who needed dialysis suffered. Families lost loved ones. That's the cost of institutional breakdown. By Friday, May 15th, the crisis had reached breaking point. The Akwa Ibom state government stepped in. EFCC representatives, the hospital management, the Nigerian Medical Association, DSS, the Nigerian police, all warring parties converged for an emergency meeting at the government house in Uyo.
Please, I beg of you, please, for the sake of the lives of the people of Akwa Ibom State, those who will not be able to go to private clinic, those who are already there, like they say, pregnant women never might start today and will make CS to save life, save the mother, save the child, and no doctor. Please, we beg of you, let the strike be called of freedom. The governor said I should appeal to you, make a statement, lest the workers return back to work tomorrow.
The Akwa Ibom state government's intervention brought a stunning reversal. The EFCC, an agency that rarely apologizes, backed down.
I've been given the permission to say on behalf of EFCC, we're very, very sorry for the errors.
In a formal statement, the agency admitted it was deeply embarrassed by the incident and tendered an apology to Professor Eyo Ekwe and the management of the teaching hospital. The professor accepted, and the Nigerian Medical Association suspended the strike. This morning, the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital is open. Doctors are back in the wards, patients are being treated, and the crisis is over. But the patients who died waiting for surgery are not coming back.
Imagine.
The families who lost
This
loved
is
ones,
madness.
while doctors
Absolute
were on
madness.
strike, are still grieving. The lesson is written in the lives we lost. You can't fight corruption by endangering the sick.
That is
You
what
can't
they
save
do in
lives
Nigeria. That is
while
what your
working
country
in
does.
conflict with people fighting corruption.
That's what your country
Both
does.
sides need to learn, because the next time the EFCC needs to verify a document, the next time a hospital feels threatened, the next time institutions collide, it cannot cost lives. All right, we just watched that report. 5 days Teargas in a hospital, patients dead, and an apology that has come too late because people have died. Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Vivai. Good morning, Rufi on fire. You weren't here on Friday when we premiered the story. I mean, we actually said that we're going to do a special report on this incident. Your thoughts on everything that unraveled? It is good that the EFCC has apologized, but I believe it came.
Okay, last week there were two versions of the story. We saw, one of the medical personnel in that hospital reporting that, people have been brutalized. A cardiothoracic surgeon, one of the very few in the country, have been arrested and all of that. And, lives were affected, families of patients were distressed. Now, first, to establish this, a hospital is a place of healing. That's why it's called hospice. It's a place where people get succor. For such a location to be turned into a battleground for whatever reason, for a Teargas zone
it's not acceptable. You cannot justify that in any way. But the EFCC then issued a statement signed by Dele Oyiwale, the spokesperson for the EFCC, saying that whatever happened there was just a merely administrative exercise to authenticate a document, a medical certificate that had been issued, and that nobody was arrested and no arrests were carried out. But of course, the public naturally became very concerned about whatever may have transpired there. And so I think it's a good development that the state government intervened in a meeting of all the stakeholders involved, including the JOHESU members, sector unions, that went on strike in response. That a meeting was called at the ESCO chambers of the Akwa Ibom state government in Uyo. And all the stakeholders that were there, the Nigerian Medical Association, the teaching hospital staff, the JOHESU union, the state government, all of them, and the EFCC and other security agencies met, and we saw that video. And some of the resolutions at that meeting, the key part of it was the representatives of the EFCC apologized that whatever happened was unfortunate and that was not deliberate, and that they were promising that that would not happen again. 2, all the stakeholders at that meeting agreed to embrace dialogue. 3, the state government also agreed that it would wade into the matter and make sure that those persons, whoever may have doctored a medical certificate or issued a false certificate, will be investigated and brought to justice. 4, the EFCC also said that they had already launched an investigation into the matter to determine what exactly happened. And other stakeholders said, well, whatever the outcome of that investigation should be made public and shared with other stakeholders in the spirit of transparency. 5, a joint committee, was also set up at that meeting to monitor the outcome, the implementation of the resolutions at that meeting. 6, the JOHESU unions that had gone on strike then decided that they will call off the strike, on the basis of which, the teaching hospital has now returned to a full operation. But at the end of the day, the people who will bear the brunt of all this, what we call the clash of institutions, will be the families of persons who lost their lives, those who were affected by the Teargas that dominated that moment of crisis. And the least that we can say is that these precautions should be taken to make sure that this kind of situation does not occur again.
Absolutely.
Because when we measure institutional conflict or disruption of processes in a place of healing, you measure it in terms of the effects on those who were directly affected by this. So on all sides, whether stakeholders or the state government or EFCC, there are lessons that can be extracted from the experience, and we hope that those lessons will be properly learned.
All right, Rufai, you had a quick comment.
Okay, I have a quick comment. I think the strike is not over because I'm getting a message from MDC and of UT. They had another emergency meeting yesterday evening where they reviewed the strike and they said they were going to continue. That after excessive deliberation, they noted that the EFCC offered verbal apology, but observed with deep reluctance of the EFCC to tender an unreserved written apology and publish same in national dailies over the unfortunate invasion of UT HH Hospital. So I think this matter.
Sorry, where is this coming from?
I got this from an intel, which from the University Teaching Hospital, which I got it from one of their consultants here, and it was an emergency meeting held. Communication emergency joint meeting of MADCAN, the UTT and ARD held on Sunday, 17th May 2026. So that's a new update as regards the matter.
Well, they had this meeting too on Sunday. They were all there as well.
Regards my comment on this, Audrey, please, I want them to still go to court and take the EFCC to task.
That 1 billion,
It's not today EFCC has been doing it. They will never stop because of this. Until we teach EFCC a lesson. They do it to personal individuals, like all of us. So it's their modus operandi. Until you take them to task, they should not collect that apology from the EFCC. Now today.
All right.
Now today, the lives that I've lost. So an apology will bring back people watching.
Like I said, apology that came too late. Then I will continue on the conversation.
Medical and Dental Consultants Association of Nigeria, that's the MD CAN.
Well, all right. We're going to continue on this conversation, like I said. But first, what do you think? Should the EFCC have used tear gas? Was the hospital wrong to lock them in? Who's accountable for the patients who died? Join the conversation. Use the hashtag, What's Trending with OG. We're reading your comments. We'll go on a short break now. When we come back, What's Trending will continue. To our gallant Nigerian armed forces and the US team for the precision strike. Thank you, Tinubu and Trump, for this partnership. More of this strategy, please. Let's finish them off completely. And I agree with that tweet. Well, Ishak wrote, this reads like a diplomatic victory note. But on the ground in the north, people are still being killed daily. So it's hard to call it an achievement when insecurity remains widespread. At this point, anything less than the complete dismantling of terrorist networks is just noise. Half measures and press statements change nothing. It's either decisive, total disruption of these groups, or we keep counting innocent lives lost. In the meantime, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has confirmed al-Munuki's killing. In a post on X, the president described the attack as a prime example of effective collaboration in the fight against terrorism. Tinubu commended the personnel involved in both sides for their professionalism and courage, saying that he looks forward to more decisive strikes against all terrorist enclaves across the nation. Well, this particular terrorist had been on the U.S. sanctions since 2023, with the U.S. State Department at the time describing him as a senior leader who provided operational guidance and funding around the world. The killing comes just days after the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, met with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, the acting National Security Advisor, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and other senior officials earlier this month. Last November, Ribadu met with U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Weeks after that meeting, the U.S. launched its Christmas Day strikes, targeting ISIS in Nigeria. Now, Vimbai, could it be a coincidence that these attacks coincide with Ribadu's meetings? Is he really on ground doing the Lord's work by helping us eliminate these animals, like one of the ex-user stated?
Well, that's a very complex question to ask, I have to say, because each of these announcements have emanated from the United States, which, when you look at international relations, protocol is everything. So what it tells us when the United States is ahead of us in making these announcements, and also they've just announced AFRICOM also struck last night in northeast Nigeria. So there were more airstrikes after what happened on Friday night. But when the United States is leading in the communication, then you start to ask who's really in control of the dynamic. Nevertheless, we see this action that has been taken. I think the elimination of this number 2 ISIS leader, as he's reported to be, is extremely significant, not just locally, but globally. However, the debates that continue to happen are vast. One of the major debates is that, well, does taking out the head of organizations such as this actually have an impact on on disseminating the terrorist groups? For example, studies have looked at the outcome of taking out an Osama bin Laden, for example, and what that really has done. We also know that some of these Africans are now being promoted to higher up in the terrorist hierarchy because their counterparts in Syria and in the Middle East are being taken out. So it goes to show you that these organizations have become very resilient, and taking out one figurehead doesn't necessarily have a direct impact to what happens on the ground. But let's hope that this situation is different. Over the weekend, we still saw some young people being abducted from Borno. We still saw policemen and soldiers being killed in Yobe State as well. So we continue to ask ourselves, and then of course there's a conflict of narrative because on the first instance, the United States says at Donald Trump's direction, President Tinubu said that it's a joint operation. Meanwhile, the United States says it's a joint operation. Tinubu says that it's a joint operation, but the Major General who speaks on behalf of the Army media, DHQ's media, is saying that it was a Nigeria-only operation, that there were no American boots on ground, and America's contribution was ISR. Now, the New York Times over the weekend did an extensive report about their own account, according to U.S. officials, which says that there were about 24 commandos, both from Nigeria and the United States. So again, there's some sort of conflicting narratives. And in the morning, I'd say, is this relevant? This is relevant because we see the expansion of terrorism is largely due to the failure of the state to be able to win hearts and minds. If you look at the history of Al-Maliki, do you know how he started? He was a barber. He was a barber in Borno State who was indoctrinated and grew and rose in the ranks of these terrorist organizations. So it also takes me to the article that was written by Major General retired Famedewa, who's now the Special Advisor for Homeland Security, who says that our problem in Nigeria is that we're not defining security correctly. Security can't just be military hardware. It must be development. So there must be a strategy beyond these attacks, these military attacks. We wait to see the outcome because after the Christmas Day attack, we saw an upsurge in violence. We saw an upsurge in attacks. So we still wait to see what these American boots on the ground are really going to produce for the everyday reality of the Nigerian. Because for now, we're kind of seeing a lot more PR stunts that benefit the Americans more than we're seeing tangible results on the ground here in Nigeria.
Yeah, but I'm happy that this young barber, I don't know if you saw his picture. He looks like a baby-faced assassin. My producer is saying the picture that we have may not have been confirmed, but he looked so young, and it just goes to show that these sort of situations that our people in the north find themselves, you can never tell who is who. Yes, and that's where I'm going at this point, at this moment. Well, more on insecurity in Oyo State. Communities are living in absolute fear and panic after terrorists launched coordinated attacks on 3 separate schools in Orire local government area, abducting over 45 students, teachers, and killing an assistant headmaster. The attacks took place on Friday, with residents saying the terrorists arrived on motorcycles, shooting sporadically as they barged into communities around 9 a.m. In a video circulating on social media, one of the abducted principals spoke from captivity. Let's take a look.
I am making this video to ask for help from everyone, starting from the federal government of Nigeria and the Oyo State government, Engineer Seyi Makinde, the Christian Association of Nigeria, and all well-meaning Nigerians, that they should come to our help and settle this thing peacefully so that our lives will not be lost. Thank you very much.
This is so sad. I cannot imagine if, a family member of mine is out there. I mean, this is really coming closer home. And Oyo State Governor and 2027 presidential aspirant Seyi Makinde held a press briefing on Sunday confirming that 7 teachers were abducted and that 1 has been killed by the abductors. He added that the state government is intensifying efforts to rescue the remaining victims. Meanwhile, the Nigerian police force on Saturday confirmed the tragic killing of 17 police officers in training at a military facility in Gubja, local government area of Yobe State. According to the force's statement, the attack happened on the 8th of May at the Nigerian Army Special Forces School, where officers were going through specialized counter-terrorism training. Terrorists attacked the facility at around 1 in the morning, hitting students from multiple directions in various series of coordinated attacks. And of course, this has, triggered a reaction also from Peter Obi. If you can take Peter Obi's post on X, he wrote, "Every security personnel killed is a tragedy to our nation. Every fallen officer represents a family thrown into grief. children left without parents, and communities robbed of those sworn to protect them. A nation cannot continue to normalize the killing of its security personnel and innocent citizens without urgent, decisive, and strategic action. We must confront insecurity with sincerity, professionality, and the political will necessary to protect lives and restore public confidence. Rufai, the Inspector General of Police, Tinji Disu, described the officers as brave, assuring their families that their sacrifice wouldn't be forgotten. 17 officers killed during this counter-terrorism training by the very terrorists they are fighting. May their souls rest in peace. These Nigerians were out there, our officers were out there to protect us, and they just died needless.
At first, I'd like to pay tribute to them.
Yes.
I pay tribute to their families. I hope that their service to this nation will never be forgotten. But also the sad reality is that we will forget their service. You know why? Because we are a nation that do not care about our officers. You know why I said so? Because I go back again to General Musa's situation. When Nigeria as a country had a chance to save him, they didn't save him. So we will forget in a hurry. And before you know it, the families of these ones will quickly be pushed out of the police barracks. They will have to rigmarole to get their pension and insurance. And they will have to suffer for this because we are a country that doesn't care about the plight of the people. This is the same country where the kind of food our soldiers were eating, somebody reported it and the person is doing a case today. Our soldiers are being paid 3,000 naira for daily feeding ration, and nobody cares about them. The politicians are just concerned of how they can feed fat and how they can manipulate primary results so that they can get into political position. And that's a sad reality. Except we start to care, things will continue. It's just like those kidnapped. Oji, when we started this administration, if we ever thought that Kwara or Yo will now be a cesspit for kidnapping and atrocities by this criminal
I never see anything.
you will never believe it. But it has come home to us. Today, most parts of the north, most parts of the southwest being inundated with crisis. And we've not been able to fight it back because we lack the political will. And that's just it, pure and simple. These people are in bushes. Why can't we get them out? Where's the recce? Where's the reconnaissance? Where are all the money to say we are investing in the military and investing in the security architecture? Anyway, if you look at the budget last year, they said the military only got about 7% for equipment.
That is it. Just may their soul rest in peace. That's all they say.
The only offense is
nothing more. Nothing.
They wanted to impact knowledge.
They will not rescue them. They will not stop the terrorism. Nothing.
Call on the Nigerian authorities. Please do what is right. Get them out as much as possible. We must not hear about any death. But
talk.
Anyway,
Only talk.
the teacher has died already.
After today, you won't talk about it again.
We are now so desensitized to these killings that we move on so quickly like it's never happened. So it's a precarious state we're living in. And it's a continuous state of trauma and disaster. And our leaders are not doing anything about it. Yes, we're celebrating killing a second-in-command terrorist. The same celebration that was punctuated by controversy of was he killed 2 years ago or afterwards. That's the kind of
so many unconfirmed reports on that. You're absolutely right, Rufai. But we'll continue to, highlight these stories. Please bring our children out of the forest at this moment. Bring them back home. Now to politics. Social media was abuzz with reactions over the weekend as results from the All Progressives Congress House of...
The terrorism in Nigeria will never end. Just when you think it has ended, you will see the one that is heavier. Nigeria is not a place